Welcome to Surrender School, Emotional Sobriety Workshop. Chapter 14, Holding On to Ourself in Relationships.
All right, welcome everybody to the next to the last session. So let's dive in. You know, they always say the two things that'll knock you off balance in program and push you toward relapse is finance and romance, right? And so this was a chapter on relationships, and I thought it was really great. A little bit of a kick in the pants, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. So Dr. Berger starts on page 261, where he says, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, love relationships test our practice of emotional sobriety like nothing else. That's not just romantic, but it's also familial, friendships, sponsorship relationships, all relationships, because we love each other when we do our work together, right? I mean, I do. It's a wonderful privilege. And so, but they do test your emotional sobriety. All close relationships do, I think. The closer we get to someone, the harder it is to hold on to ourselves, to keep our values intact, to know who we are, to not get hooked by our emotional dependency. Page 266, he says, emotional dependency creates toxic rules. These rules, most of which exist on a subconscious level, are designed to manipulate others to behave in specific ways that make us feel loved, validated, and emotionally secure. And one that I used to have, and I hate to admit it, but one of the toxic rules I had was I would give the cold shoulder. Like if you hurt my feelings, I would clam up, pull back, and give the cold shoulder. And what you were supposed to do was run over and, make sure that I was okay and that everything was okay. And it was my way, subconsciously, of manipulating you into taking care of me. And that's what it was about. So it's those subtle subconscious rules that we stumble into. The whole mind reading, the toxic rule that you should know how I feel, or you should know what I want. We've been together for 20 years. You should know what I want, right? Okay. Yeah, that one made me feel a little. So toxic rules are direct or indirect attempts to control the people around us, either through coercion or manipulation. Grinding, which I think is such an unfortunate word choice for this, but I understand what he's saying here. Grinding occurs when we struggle and work through our differences in a loving relationship. To me, this is the actual work both people do to make a relationship work. Not one person, but both people work together to kind of grind things down to where they work. The goal of grinding is the victory of all at the expense of no one. So it's not about getting your way. It's not a zero-sum game. Everybody wins. And that takes some practice in working with people to do that. It takes practice. Toxic rules interfere with grinding because they make it impossible to find a mutually satisfactory solution. So 267, when we label our partners as either good or bad, we are manipulating them. We are trying to change their behavior to align with our needs and wants. Oh, it's such a good wife. Oh, it's such a good husband, right? It's that manipulation thing. It's like you're talking to your dog, good boy, and you want them to repeat that behavior again. We don't want to approach our close relationships that way because it's just a form of manipulation. And I would not have seen it that way, to be honest with you. That is not the way I would have thought of it at first. I would have thought I was just saying, what a wonderful person they were. I wouldn't have seen it as a form of manipulation. But if you think about it a little bit, it really can be. Page 271. Good, nourishing rules can be used by everyone. That's how you tell the difference. Toxic rules are one-sided. So a toxic rule is when I'm upset, you have to stop whatever you're doing and make me feel better. It's all about me. A nourishing rule is when I'm upset, I'll ask you for comfort, and if you can, you'll give it to me. If not, I'll find another way to get comfort. It doesn't demand that you do something. 272. The process of change is that we own what we are doing. We take 100% responsibility, and then something new becomes possible. This requires rigorous self-honesty and humility. Demanding that things go our way is a surefire way of turning any relationship into a power struggle. And I don't know about you, but I've seen that a lot. And I see that a lot in the workplace, a lot of power struggle stuff in the workplace. But of course, definitely with children, right? And also with spouses. Nobody likes to be manipulated. Nobody likes to be forced to do anything. And you know what? I think now that I'm talking about it, I think I can see a lot of power struggle stuff that comes up in sponsorship relationships. When the sponsor is very demanding and you will do it my way and you will do it this way and you will do, you know, that whole passive aggressive rebel kind of stuff can come up in sponsees. And then you've got that power struggle going. So when we think we need our partners to behave a certain way to make us happy, then we are being emotionally dependent. And we've talked about that a lot over the last number of chapters. Emotional sobriety urges us to unhook that dependency by expressing the wishes of our true self without expecting that our partner will fulfill them. We express what we'd like, but we don't have an expectation that they're going to do what we want. We are saying, gee, it would be nice, but my love for you does not depend on you doing what I want you to do. And that's a tough one. That's unconditional. Page 273. Immature love believes that our heaven-sent partner will magically deliver us from our pain or suffering. You know, no one's going to do that for you. I mean, they can't. They can't. Only we can deliver ourselves. And that's what we've learned in this book, is that only we can deliver ourselves, and we are the hero we have been waiting for. On page 274, immature love is when we aren't really in love with our partner. We are in love with our idealized fantasy of what our partner should be, but we're not really in love with a real person. Our fantasy of the perfect partner is what we're in love with. And these fantasies punish and torture us. And they punish and torture our partners because no one can live up to an idealized fantasy. I don't care how good they are. Immature love is a form of emotional dependency, and immature love is rooted in selfishness. We are only interested in satisfying our own needs. Dr. Berger explains that selfish people don't love themselves too much. Selfish people actually hate themselves. I'm going to say that again. Selfish people don't love themselves too much. They actually hate themselves. They feel empty and frustrated, which makes them demand that someone else step in to make them whole, provide them with emotional security, and validate them. Selfish people are emotionally dependent. Page 277. Emotionally dependent people see the world in terms of what they can get out of it. Immature love is riddled with toxic rules. If you love me, you will do X. If you love me, you will not do X. If you love me, you will feel X. If you love me, you will think X. Immature love takes hostages. It doesn't have partnerships. It has hostages. Immature love says, I love you because I need you, not because I want you. I love you because I need you. Mature love is based on wanting our partners to do what they want to do rather than living up to our expectations. It's about being a cheerleader for our partner, and we want them to be themselves, to be their unique individual self, and to be the best unique individual self they can be. Not according to our specifications, but according to their specifications. Emotionally independent people are able to love in an affirming way. Their capacity to love is an affirmation of their own self-love, their love for life, their commitment to emotional growth, and their own emotional freedom and emotional sobriety. So our ability to love other people is a reflection of our ability to love ourselves. And I did that. That was not something I ever would have thought up on my own, because I didn't think my love for you had anything to do with how I felt about myself. I just didn't. I didn't see the connection. I didn't see how I felt about myself made all kinds of emotionally dependent, emotionally drunk, toxic, unenforceable rules to my partner. I didn't see that connection. So I think that's a really cool thing that he brought out into the open. He says our relationship with ourselves impacts our capacity to love. Mature love is created by having a loving relationship with ourselves. We have to become aware of how we talk to ourselves. I'm going to read that one again. We have to become aware of how we talk to ourselves. I don't know about you, but through this disease process, and as my disease progressed, the way I talked to myself got worse and worse and more hateful. And the less I was able to tolerate and forgive myself, the less I was able to tolerate and forgive others. So those things really are connected. They really are. We need to develop, he says, we need to develop solid, authentic self-esteem. And that doesn't mean perfection. We had a whole chapter on perfection. It doesn't mean that we become perfect and then we can love ourselves and then love other people. It's we love ourselves despite our imperfections. Sometimes we love ourselves because of our imperfections. On page 280, he gives a whole list of healthy rules to help us love what is, understand that it is not our partner's job to make us whole, and to just be able to love the person as they are. Okay. The first rule, he says, is make room for people and not rules. We need a no shoulds rule. We still ask for what we want, but we don't demand that we get it. When I ask, you should give me what I want. That rule doesn't fly in mature love. The next healthy rule is differences are desirable and need to be respected. Differences are not a threat. I used to be afraid of differences, like that meant I was going to be abandoned or something. And that he is saying that is not the case. Mature love is grounded in the awareness of and appreciation of our partners as unique individuals. They may have a different opinion on that than you. It doesn't mean that you can't love each other anyway. Okay, it doesn't mean that love will be withdrawn or that you need to withdraw love until you think or believe the way I do. The next healthy rule is struggle is beneficial. If we see struggle as harmful, we will try and blame ourselves or our partner for it. Struggle doesn't need to be serious or heavy. We can learn to laugh about it. I know I laugh when I find myself falling into the same trap again. And it's usually when my wife is quiet and she's like in her own head, doing her own thing, being her own person. And then I'm like, what are you thinking? And I fall into that. And then I can just laugh about it now. But what I used to be doing was, are we okay? Are we okay? That kind of thing. And my little toxic rule was you need to interact with me all the time in order for me to feel okay and that you love me. And that's not true. She's being who she is. The fourth rule that he talks about is grief is necessary. It is our way of integrating a loss. We have to respect the differences between how we might grieve and how our partner is grieving. And I think a lot of times people do grieve very differently, and we have to give people the space to do it the way they need to do it. And we need to give ourselves the space we need to do it. The fifth rule he talks about is cooperate with integrity. And this one was kind of a punch in the face to me. We don't accept anything that is not freely given, nor do we offer anything that we cannot freely give. Compromise is a corrupt form of cooperation. That took me a long time to puzzle over, because I thought compromise was all about what, marriage and relationships are all about, is compromise, right? They talk about it all the time in popular literature and on TV and in books and movies and all that stuff. And he's saying compromise is a corrupt form of cooperation. And I think that's because he sees compromise as someone either giving something they don't want to or taking something that isn't freely given. And so compromising is really one person wins and one person loses. So one person compromises and one person gets what they want. I do think part of his grinding thing is finding a way that everybody's needs can get met. And I guess you can think of that as compromise. But I think of that more as everybody gets what they want, not the compromise result of everybody only gets part of what they want or nobody gets what they want. But that is a tough one. And if you want, you can share about that one when we're doing our discussion questions, because that one really took me some thinking. And I know it's semantics because it's just a word, but it's an interesting thought that compromise really isn't the goal of relationships. Win-win solutions are the goal. The sixth rule that he brought up was ask for what you need. When it is unavailable, appreciate what is. So I think what he means by this is, okay, I had a rough day. I come home, I ask for what I need, like comfort and reassurance. Say my spouse isn't able to do that for me. Maybe she had a really bad day and she can't do it either, or she's preoccupied with a crisis at work or something like that. I just need to be appreciative that I have a wonderful spouse, I have a home to come home to, and I have friends I can go to for support. I have a program I can work on my feelings. I have a sponsor I can call. Okay, so I appreciate what is, even though I'm not getting what I specifically asked for. Okay, and the seventh rule was don't press, inspire. If we are pressing our partner to change, then we are not fully accepting ourselves. That's interesting. We need to take responsibility for our side of the street. We don't press our partners to change. We say honestly what we don't like and what we want. Our honesty may or may not inspire a change in them. Yeah. It's that demanding that they change simply because we don't like it, we don't want it. A really good response is you're not supposed to get angry. So when you get upset, don't get angry. I want you to do this. When there are people that just, and then they come back and can talk it over later. And the fact that it makes you cry makes you want them to change it, but they may or may not. You can say an honest desire that it really would help me out if you didn't do that, because then I cry and then I can't talk and then we don't get anything solved. but they may or may not do what it is you're asking for. And that has to be okay. That has to be okay. Then I have to come up with something different to do. Like when they start to yell, I can say, you know what? I'm starting to get really scared and I'm having a hard time thinking. So I'm going to go in another room. And then when I get myself together, I'll come back and we'll keep talking. Something like that. Not depending on them to change what they're doing. That's hard. If you loved me, you really would do that. Okay. And then the last rule that he said is let love be the result of who we are with each other. That's beautiful. That's poetic. Love emerges as a byproduct of connection. Rather than placing our faith in love as a plan or a commitment, we place our faith in creating a nourishing emotional climate for our relationship. That's poetry in motion right there. Okay, that's all I've got for today. We're ready for our discussion.
See you next week.